I went to a party with my husband. He left with another woman because she's rich. He tossed his car keys at me and laughed. Find your own way home. The next morning, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. His mistress was crying and he stood frozen at the door, realizing something he never expected. For 15 years, I told myself that marriage requires compromise, that not every slight deserves a throwdown, that keeping the peace is more important than defending your pride. I told myself these things while my husband Sean gradually erased me from his professional life. He'd introduce me as someone who does bookkeeping, like I'm some part-timer crunching numbers for a corner deli, not someone who runs a successful consulting practice. I told myself these things while he spent our kids' college fund on 5-star hotel rooms with a woman whose family basically owned half of Connecticut. I am Jane Brennan, 42 years old, and I am damn good at lying to myself when the truth is too uncomfortable to face. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how I got my payback, I gotta ask, are you subscribed? If you believe in karma, in getting what you deserve, in justice, hit that subscribe button right now. Don't be the person who just watches someone else's life get torched and just scrolls on by. Seriously. And if you're not going to subscribe, at least have the guts to jump in the comments and tell me why. I'm waiting. Now, let's get back to the story. My specialty is financial restructuring. I'm the person small businesses call when they're on the brink of collapse. Companies hire me when their revenue statements are straight up lying to their bank balances, when money just disappears, poof, vanishes into gaps they can't explain, when they suspect someone is stealing them blind but they don't have the receipts. I analyze their books with surgical precision. I find exactly where the funds are being diverted and why their financial structure is falling apart. I am excellent at this. I'm a bloodhound for this stuff. Because I understand how people hide theft behind legit-looking transactions, how they exploit trust to create plausible deniability, how they gaslight themselves into believing that what they're doing isn't really wrong if nobody notices. The irony? It's almost funny. I can spot financial deception in a corporate ledger in a few hours, but I missed it in my own marriage for 18 months. My husband, Sean, sells luxury cars to the Greenwich elite, the kind of people who see a $70,000 car as a reasonable little something for themselves. He is charming in that practiced, slick way that makes people believe they're special, that their connection with him is unique, that he genuinely cares about their satisfaction and not just his fat commission check. He's been using these same skills on me for years, and I let him, because the alternative was admitting that the life I built, my perfect life, was constructed on foundations that were never as solid as I believed. Thursday evening, he walked into my home office. "You need to attend my dealership's anniversary gala on Saturday," he said. After 3 straight years of freezing me out of his professional world, this requirement should have set off every single alarm bell in my body. And you know what? It did. They were blaring. I just ignored them. I'd become a pro at pretending everything was fine. 2 days later, I was standing in a country club parking lot at midnight, holding car keys my husband had literally thrown at my chest, watching him drive away with another woman. And I finally stopped lying to myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up in that parking lot, you need to understand what I was before that moment. You need to see the life I'd convinced myself was worth protecting, even as it was slowly poisoning everything I touched. My home in suburban Connecticut looks like it belongs in Architectural Digest. White picket fence. Sean insisted on it 5 years ago. Successful people have white picket fences, Jane. Hydrangeas that bloom like clockwork every spring because I researched the perfect soil, pH, and fertilization schedule and followed the instructions with the same precision I apply to a balance sheet. The interior walls are all painted in these fashionable gray-ja neutral tones that Sean picked out to impress the colleagues he'd occasionally bring home for cocktails before he stopped bringing anyone home at all. Everything curated, everything intentional, everything designed to project this image of stability and achievement that had nothing to do with the reality rotting inside those carefully painted walls. Our daughter, Michelle, is 14. She's brilliant, in that quiet way that gets overlooked in a world that rewards volume over substance. She watches everything. Her dark eyes miss nothing. She's constantly absorbing information and drawing conclusions she keeps locked behind a careful mask of teenage indifference. 2 months ago, she asked me, "Why doesn't Dad eat dinner with us anymore?" I gave her the standard BS, his demanding work schedule, important clients who required evening attention. How successful people sometimes have to sacrifice family time. The usual script. She just looked at me with this expression that was way too knowing for a 14-year-old, and she said nothing, which somehow felt 1,000 times worse than if she called me a liar to my face. Her silence was judgment. Her silence meant she knew I was protecting a fiction that neither of us believed anymore. Our son, George, is 11. He's still open and affectionate, in that way boys are before the world teaches them to be tough and unbothered. He still hugs me when he comes home from school and tells me everything about his day. Lunch trades, playground drama, the book his teacher is reading to the class. 3 weeks ago he asked, "Mom, why don't you and Dad laugh together like my friend Mason's parents do?" I told him that adults just get quieter as they get older, that it's normal, nothing to worry about, that love just changes shape. But it's still there. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. My parents? They've been married 47 years. They still hold hands at the grocery store. They still finish each other's sentences and share private jokes. They still look at each other like they're seeing something precious that nobody else gets to see. I know what a real partnership looks like. I know what ride or die is supposed to feel like when it's genuine, not just a performance. And I know, with absolute gut-wrenching certainty, that what Sean and I have is not that. And it hasn't been for longer than I want to admit. But admitting that truth meant admitting I'd wasted 15 years. It meant accepting that I'd been so focused on maintaining the appearance of success that I'd ignored the structural failures threatening to bring the whole thing crashing down. It meant facing the reality that I had become exactly like the failing businesses I consult for. The ones that keep operating long past the point when any sane person would recommend shutting it down. The ones that cling to past success while drowning in a present disaster. The shift in Sean's behavior happened so gradually, I could gaslight myself into thinking I was imagining it. 3 years ago, he stopped inviting me to dealership events. He claimed I made his colleagues uncomfortable, said I was too direct with my questions about sales practices, that the luxury car world required a social fluency I just didn't have, that my bluntness clashed with the subtle dance of high-end sales. And I bought it. I accepted this explanation because, honestly, it fit. I am more comfortable with spreadsheets than cocktail parties. I am more at home analyzing financial statements than making small talk about golf handicaps and vacation homes in the Hamptons. I don't enjoy the performance of wealth, all that flexing that seems to dominate Sean's world. But accepting his explanation became accepting my exclusion, and exclusion became invisibility. Sean started staying late at work multiple nights a week, always with plausible explanations. Difficult clients, big deals. He started dressing better, wearing expensive cologne I hadn't bought him, checking his phone with this twitchy, secretive energy. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became vague, dismissive, like the details of his life were suddenly classified, too complicated for little old me to understand. Our conversations shrank to logistics, kids' schedules, household repairs, the kind of functional exchanges you have with a roommate, not the partner you once stayed up all night with, talking about your dreams. I noticed all of it. I documented it in my head, the same way I document financial irregularities for a client. I saw the pattern emerging, but I chose to interpret it as natural marital evolution rather than systematic erasure. Because the alternative was just too terrifying. Sean Brennan works at Meridian Luxury Imports, a dealership that caters to Connecticut's wealthiest 1%. He sells cars that cost more than most families earn in a year. He wears custom-tailored suits that probably cost more than the used sedan I drive to client meetings. He has relationships with country club members whose names are always in the Wall Street Journal or on society pages. He speaks fluent aspirational. He convinces clients that the right car won't just elevate their transportation, it'll elevate their entire social standing. I used to find this skill impressive. Now I just see it as practiced manipulation. The same manipulation he applies to everyone he meets, including his own wife. He'd been selling me a version of our marriage the same way he sells a high-end sports car, emphasizing the features he knew I wanted to believe in, while carefully concealing the defects that would make me question the deal. And I bought it. For 15 years, I bought every last word. That Thursday evening, Sean walked into my home office. I was knee-deep in a financial analysis for a client in Stamford. He was still in his work clothes, that charcoal suit that made him look like he belonged in a boardroom, those Italian leather shoes he insisted were a business necessity, not a vanity purchase. He just stood in the doorway, that carefully neutral expression he uses when he wants something but doesn't want to show his hand. "You need to come to the dealership anniversary gala this Saturday," he said. Not an invitation, not a request, a requirement, delivered like it was already a done deal. I looked up from my spreadsheet. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "Why?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice casual, but my pulse was already hammering. "Why now? After 3 years?" "The managing director's wife will be there," he said. Like that explained everything. "It looks better if we attend as couples. You understand?" I didn't. I didn't understand at all, but I nodded anyway, because that's what I had learned to do. Accept the non-explanations, swallow the questions that might start a fight, maintain the fiction, because acknowledging the problem means doing something about it, and I just wasn't ready for that. So, I agreed. I agreed to put on a dress and smile next to my husband and pretend we were the power couple we hadn't been in years. I agreed because, and this is the pathetic part, I was just grateful he wanted me there at all. That after 3 years of being invisible, I was finally being invited back in, even if the invitation felt more like a summons. 2 days later, everything I'd been pretending not to see would become impossible to ignore. Saturday evening was perfect, postcard perfect, crisp autumn air, clear skies. The leaves were all turning gold and crimson. It looked like a real estate photo for a luxury property listing. Sean spent 40 minutes getting ready, adjusted his tie 3 times, used way more cologne than usual. I watched him from the bedroom doorway, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, the physical warning my brain refused to acknowledge. I wore a navy silk dress I'd bought 3 years ago for a client's wedding. It was the nicest thing I owned, elegant, timeless. I paired it with simple jewelry and practical heels. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone professional, presentable. When I looked at Sean in his custom suit, I saw someone who belonged to a different world entirely. The drive to the Brookfield Country Club took 30 minutes. We drove in silence. Sean just checked his phone at every red light, with this focused intensity that made it clear whatever he was reading mattered more than the wife sitting right next to him. I just stared out the window, trying to remember the last time we'd driven somewhere together, just the 2 of us, without the kids as a buffer. I couldn't. Not in the last year. The Brookfield Country Club exists in a different economic reality. The building itself is a monument to old money, designed to intimidate anyone who wasn't born understanding the secret handshakes of established privilege. Mahogany-paneled walls, crystal chandeliers, marble floors. The air smelled like expensive perfume and entitlement. I felt immediately, viscerally, out of place. My dress, which had seemed fine at home, now looked cheap, shabby. These women were wearing gowns that cost more than my mortgage payment, jewelry that needed its own security detail. They moved with this breezy confidence, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, all part of some social performance I didn't get. The second we walked through those doors, Sean transformed. It was instant, like he'd flipped a switch. His posture straightened, his smile widened into that calculated high-wattage beam. His voice took on that warm, engaging, "I'm one of you" tone he uses with wealthy clients. He worked the room, a total pro, moving from group to group. I just followed a step behind him, like an accessory he'd reluctantly brought along, and every single time he introduced me the same way. "This is my wife, Jane. She does bookkeeping for small businesses." Bookkeeping, not financial consulting, not runs her own practice. Bookkeeping, a word deliberately chosen to minimize me, to make me sound small and unimportant. I should have corrected him. I should have said, "Actually, I run a successful consulting practice specializing in corporate financial restructuring." But I said nothing, because correcting Sean in front of his important colleagues felt like starting a fight I didn't have the energy for, and because, maybe, some small part of me had started to believe him, that my work wasn't impressive. I grabbed a glass of wine and parked myself near a decorative column where I could just observe. Sean had already ditched me, deep in conversation with a group of guys in suits that probably cost more than my car. He was glowing, just soaking in their validation. And then she walked in, and everything stopped. Queen, I'd learn her name later, didn't just enter the ballroom. She commanded it. She had that effortless confidence that comes from never, not once in your entire life, questioning if you belong. She was stunning, in that high-maintenance way that requires both great genes and a massive budget. Perfect hair, a custom-designed dress that fit her like a second skin, jewelry that sparkled with real stones. But it wasn't her appearance that hit me. It was the change in Sean. The second he spotted her, his mask just fell away. His whole face lit up. It was raw, unguarded. It was an intensity I hadn't seen directed at me in years, maybe ever. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room. They gravitated toward each other like magnets. She put her hand on his arm with this casual intimacy, and he leaned in close, laughing at something she whispered. It was genuine laughter, not the fake kind for clients. I just stood by my column, watching my husband basically fall in love with another woman right in front of my face. As if I didn't exist. As if our 15 years, our 2 children, our shared history were just irrelevant. Eventually, Sean remembered I was there and brought her over. "This is Jane," he said. "Just Jane, not my wife." "Lovely to meet you," Queen said, with a smile that never touched her eyes. Her hand was still on Sean's arm. Over the next hour, I pieced it together. Queen was generational wealth. Her family owned Whitmore Development Corporation, a real estate empire up and down the Northeast Corridor. She was recently divorced and had apparently taken an interest in luxury cars. And Sean? Sean was her personal sales consultant. That phrase, personal sales consultant, it echoed in my head. The rest of the evening was a slow-motion car crash. Sean and Queen disappeared, twice. The first time, he claimed they needed to discuss specifications for her new car, on the terrace, where it was quieter. They were gone for 25 minutes. When they came back, her lipstick was smudged and his tie was loose. The second time, they went to get drinks. That took 20 minutes. I just stood there, alone, by my column, pretending I didn't see the pitying glances from the other wives, pretending I didn't hear the whispers that stopped when I got too close. One woman, I later learned her name was Megan Ashford, gave me a look of genuine sympathy before her husband quickly steered her away. She was just another witness to my public humiliation. I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I observed, with this weird clinical detachment, how thoroughly and publicly my husband was ditching me. I thought about leaving. I could call an Uber, just walk out and never look back. But some stubborn, angry part of me refused. I refused to slink away like I had done something wrong, so I stayed. I stood by my column and watched my marriage end in real time. At 11 p.m., as the party was winding down, Sean finally came over. Queen was plastered to his side. He had this weird look on his face, excitement and triumph. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his car keys, and tossed them at me. They hit me in the chest before I caught them. "Find your own way home," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Queen's offering to show me her new estate in Greenwich. Could be important for business. You understand?" He smiled. Not at me, at the audience. A performance of power. Queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I'm sure you can manage, Jane. You're so capable with practical matters." Her hand was on his arm, a gesture of pure possession. They turned and walked away. Sean didn't look back. Not once. Watching him drive off? Man, that feeling. It's a special kind of hell. If you've ever been made to feel that small, that disposable, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hit subscribe if you're riding with me on this revenge journey, because what comes next is exactly what he deserves. Honestly, if you can watch this and not subscribe, are you even human? Are you on his side? Drop a comment and explain yourself. I dare you. I stood there in that parking lot, holding his keys, watching my husband of 15 years drive off in another woman's custom Range Rover, and I felt something fundamental just break. Not with a bang, but quietly, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. You don't see it until you're already falling through. I drove Sean's car home. My hands were shaking. In the rearview mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked harder, older, more dangerous. The rage was there, hot and choking. But underneath it, something else was forming. Something cold, analytical, precise. The problem solver part of my brain was waking up. This was no longer a marriage to be saved. This was a fraud to be investigated. The house was dark and silent. Our kids, Michelle and George, were spending the weekend with my parents. I had arranged it 2 weeks ago, thinking it would be nice for us to have a date night at his work gala. Now the timing felt suspicious, calculated. Sean knew the kids wouldn't be home. He had planned this. He had orchestrated my public humiliation with the same attention to detail he applied to closing a big sale. That realization changed everything. I went to my home office. I turned on every light. I made coffee strong enough to strip paint. And then I did what I do best. I started digging. Sean and I had joint accounts. Standard. I'd never questioned it. I'd trusted him. That trust, I now realized, had been catastrophically stupid. But we also had personal accounts. I had mine for my consulting business. He had his for his commission checks. I'd never looked at his. I figured as long as he paid his share of the bills, his walking around money was his business. Another mistake. I started with our joint credit card statements. 3 years of transaction history. I downloaded everything, built spreadsheets, categorized every single charge. This is my job. I find the patterns. The first pattern popped in 20 minutes. Regular charges at the Brookfield Inn. Every Friday afternoon. For the past 8 months. Always the same amount, $275. I pulled up the hotel's website. Premium suite. Friday afternoon check-in. A day rate. It matched. Every Friday for 8 months, Sean was renting a hotel room, while I thought he was working late. I added it up. Nearly $9,000 spent on hotel rooms. That was just the start. Expensive restaurant charges on nights he was at the office. Places I'd never even heard of. Multiple purchases at high-end jewelry stores. I cross-referenced the dates with my calendar. No birthday, no anniversary, no gifts for me. He was buying jewelry for her, with our joint card, with money I earned. Then I found it. A charge from Le Maison Boutique. $4,000 3 weeks ago. I looked up the store. Exclusive. High-end designer. I thought about the dress Queen had been wearing, how it fit her perfectly. Sean had bought his mistress a $4,000 dress, using our money. The rage was so strong I thought I was going to be sick. But I forced myself to stay focused, keep digging, build the case. Next, I pulled up Sean's personal checking account. He kept his password on a sticky note in an old planner. He wasn't sophisticated, he was just arrogant. He thought I was too stupid or too beaten down to ever look. His account revealed monthly transfers, $5,000 a month, for the past 7 months, to something called VW Holdings LLC, $35,000 total. VW, Vanessa Whitmore, Queen. Wait, no, her family name was Whitmore. Queen. Was that her first name or a nickname? The family was Whitmore Development, Vanessa. That must be her real name. Queen was probably some bougie nickname. VW Holdings LLC, Vanessa Whitmore Holdings. Sean was making direct payments to a company controlled by his mistress. I spent the next 2 hours diving into corporate registrations, public records. VW Holdings LLC was registered in Connecticut, a business consulting firm. Principal officer Vanessa Whitmore. Business purpose, providing strategic advisory services to automotive sales professionals. It was a cover, a shell company, designed to disguise payments. Vanessa hadn't just had an affair with Sean. She had monetized him. She'd set up a shell company to collect payments from him, and he'd been so desperate to keep her, to get access to her wealth and her world, that he had willingly bankrupted our family to do it. The professional quality of the con, it was almost impressive. But I wasn't finished. I pulled our savings account statements, the account I'd been steadily funding, our emergency fund, our kids' college fund. It had been systematically drained. Sean had been making withdrawals, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. The withdrawal dates matched the transfer dates to VW Holdings. He had been stealing our children's college fund to pay his millionaire mistress. But the discovery that made my blood run cold, the one that changed this from a nasty divorce to a criminal case, was in our filing cabinet. I was looking for our original mortgage papers, and I found a second set of documents, a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $25,000, taken out 6 months ago. This kind of loan requires spousal consent. Both names on the title have to sign. I looked at the signature page, and I saw my name, written in handwriting that was close to mine, but not right. The loop on the J was wrong. The slant was off. Someone had practiced my signature. They'd gotten close enough to fool a notary who wasn't paying attention, but not close enough to fool me. Sean had forged my signature on legal loan documents. That wasn't just betrayal, that was fraud, criminal fraud. That's when I knew this wasn't just cheating, this was a crime. My blood ran cold. If you're feeling that same chill down your spine, you know you need to see what happens next. Subscribing is the only way to make sure you don't miss the fallout. Don't risk it. And if you're still holding out, seriously? What's stopping you? Let me know in the comments why you're passing on the best revenge story you'll see all year. I sat back, staring at the pile of evidence. Bank statements, credit card records, forged mortgage documents. Together, they told the whole story. Sean had stolen, in total, around $180,000. He'd drained our savings. He'd liquidated our kids' education fund. He'd taken out an illegal loan on our home. And he'd done all of this while minimizing my job, calling me a bookkeeper, while I was the one paying for the roof over his head. The sky was getting light. I'd been up all night. My coffee was cold. My eyes were burning. But I had it. I had the receipts. A complete ironclad financial picture of his betrayal. Evidence that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Sean had thrown his keys at me and told me to find my own way home. He thought I'd just disappear. He had made a catastrophic miscalculation. I had found my way home, and now I was going to use his own documented crimes to systematically dismantle his entire life. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. Caller ID, Sean. I let it ring 3 times, took a deep breath, composed my voice. "Catherine," he said, "no greeting. No, sorry I publicly humiliated you and abandoned you. Just a demand. I need you to transfer $50,000 from your business account to my personal checking. Today." The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. I almost laughed. After everything, he was calling to demand more money from my business. "What for, Sean?" I asked. My voice was pure ice. "Vanessa's," I heard him catch himself. "Queen is offering to invest in a luxury vehicle leasing venture I'm starting, but I need capital to show commitment. She's putting in $500,000. I just need to match 10% to secure the partnership." He was still being scammed. Oh my God, this wasn't a partnership. This was the final extraction. She was getting him to liquidate his last asset, me, before she ghosted him. He wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a mark. Too blinded by clout and infatuation to see he was being played. "I'll need to review the business plan and partnership documents, Sean," I said. "All business." "There's no time for your analysis, Jane," he snapped. "This is opportunity knocking. Either you're with me or you're in my way." "I see," I said quietly. "I'll make my decision soon." I hung up and immediately dialed Denzel Martinez. Denzel is an attorney, a bulldog. He specializes in marital fraud and asset protection. He'd been a client of mine 2 years ago. I'd saved his struggling practice. He owed me. He answered on the 3rd ring. "David Martinez." "Denzel, it's Jane Brennan. I need help. My husband has been systematically stealing from our family to fund an affair. I need a specialist in marital fraud." There was a pause. Then his voice got sharp. "Tell me everything." I gave him the 20-minute version. The hotel, the shell company, the drained accounts, the forged mortgage. When I finished, Denzel said, "Jane, your husband just handed you a nuclear weapon. Let me make some calls." 3 hours later, he called back. "I've got someone, Angela Thorne. She's a forensic accountant, the best in Connecticut. She's agreed to look at your case as a favor. Can you meet her at your house in an hour?" Angela Thorne arrived at noon. She was all business. Sharp eyes, sharp suit. Denzel came with her. I laid out every piece of paper on my kitchen table. Angela worked in silence for an hour, just sipping her coffee, her eyes flying across the pages. Finally, she looked up, and she looked pissed. "This is one of the most comprehensive patterns of marital financial fraud I've seen in 15 years, she said. "Your husband has committed forgery, depleted marital assets, and transferred substantial sums to a shell company. This isn't just a divorce. This is potential criminal fraud." She tapped her pen on the VW Holdings registration. "But there's something else. I've seen this exact pattern before. Twice. Same company name. Same principal officer. Vanessa Whitmore." "I think," Angela said, "your husband's mistress is a serial con artist, targeting married men with disposable income. And if that's true..." She opened her iPad and started typing, searching databases I didn't even know existed. "Here it is," she said. "VW Holdings has received payments from at least 3 other individuals, all of them connected to Meridian Luxury Imports." She turned the iPad to me. "Your husband isn't special, Jane. He's one of several marks she's running this scam on. She targets middle-aged guys in high-commission sales, men susceptible to flattery from a queen they see as unattainable. She initiates an affair, introduces a fake investment opportunity, and bleeds them dry. But here's her critical mistake," Angela said, a grim smile on her face. VW Holdings has been generating massive revenue, and she hasn't been filing tax returns. She's not declaring this as income. That, my dear, is tax evasion, and the amounts involved are big enough to trigger a serious IRS investigation. She did some quick math. She owes, at minimum, $250,000 in back taxes, not including penalties and interest, which will likely double it. Denzel leaned forward. So what's the play? Vanessa's... I heard him catch himself. Queen is offering to invest in a luxury vehicle leasing venture I'm starting, but I need capital to show commitment. She's putting in $500,000. I just need to match 10% to secure the partnership. He was still being scammed. Oh my God, this wasn't a partnership. This was the final extraction. She was getting him to liquidate his last asset, me, before she ghosted him. He wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a mark, too blinded by clout and infatuation to see he was being played. I'll need to review the business plan and partnership documents, Sean, I said, all business. There's no time for your analysis, Jane, he snapped. This is opportunity knocking. Either you're with me or you're in my way. I see, I said quietly. I'll make my decision soon. I hung up and immediately dialed Denzel Martinez. Denzel is an attorney, a bulldog. He specializes in marital fraud and asset protection. He'd been a client of mine 2 years ago. I'd saved his struggling practice. He owed me. He answered on the third ring. David Martinez. Denzel, it's Jane Brennan. I need help. My husband has been systematically stealing from our family to fund an affair. I need a specialist in marital fraud. There was a pause, then his voice got sharp. Tell me everything. I gave him the 20-minute version, the hotel, the shell company, the drained accounts, the forged mortgage. When I finished, Denzel said, Jane, your husband just handed you a nuclear weapon. Let me make some calls. 3 hours later, he called back. I've got someone, Angela Thorne. She's a forensic accountant, the best in Connecticut. She's agreed to look at your case as a favor. Can you meet her at your house? In an hour? Angela Thorne arrived at noon. She was all business. Sharp eyes, sharp suit. Denzel came with her. I laid out every piece of paper on my kitchen table. Angela worked in silence for an hour, just sipping her coffee, her eyes flying across the pages. Finally, she looked up, and she looked pissed. This is one of the most comprehensive patterns of marital financial fraud I've seen in 15 years, she said. Your husband has committed forgery, depleted marital assets, and transferred substantial sums to a shell company. This isn't just a divorce, this is potential criminal fraud. She tapped her pen on the VW Holdings registration. But there's something else. I've seen this exact pattern before. Twice. Same company name, same principal officer, Vanessa Whitmore. I think, Angela said, your husband's mistress is a serial con artist, targeting married men with disposable income. And if that's true... She opened her iPad and started typing, searching databases I didn't even know existed. Here it is, she said. VW Holdings has received payments from at least 3 other individuals, all of them connected to Meridian Luxury Imports. She turned the iPad to me. Your husband isn't special, Jane. He's one of several marks she's running this scam on. She targets middle-aged guys in high-commission sales, men susceptible to flattery from a queen they see as unattainable. She initiates an affair, introduces a fake investment opportunity, and bleeds them dry. But here's her critical mistake, Angela said, a grim smile on her face. VW Holdings has been generating massive revenue, and she hasn't been filing tax returns. She's not declaring this as income. That, my dear, is tax evasion. And the amounts involved are big enough to trigger a serious IRS investigation. She did some quick math. She owes at minimum $250,000 in back taxes, not including penalties and interest, which will likely double it. Denzel leaned forward. So what's the play? The play, Angela said, is we file for divorce with comprehensive financial exhibits. We also file a civil fraud lawsuit against Vanessa Whitmore and VW Holdings. And we forward all of this documentation straight to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. She looked right at me. Jane, we can claw back a substantial portion of the money. We can show the divorce court you're the victim of a conspiracy. And we can ensure Vanessa Whitmore faces federal consequences for her fraud. How long? I asked. I'll have my full report done in 48 hours, Angela said. I can file everything by Monday morning, Denzel added. He met my eyes. Once we light this fuse, there's no going back. Sean will know you've discovered everything. Vanessa will know she's been exposed. This will get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. They made it ugly in that parking lot. I'm just documenting it. Monday morning, Denzel filed the divorce petition, the civil fraud lawsuit, the anonymous tip and comprehensive evidence packet to the IRS. The dominoes were set. All I had to do was wait for the first one to fall. It fell Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Sean. His voice was high, tight, pure panic. Jane, Vanessa's Queen's attorney just called me. She's threatening to sue me for harassment. She says I misrepresented our business relationship. She's terminating our consulting agreement. I need those documents, Jane. The ones showing the payments were legitimate. I took a slow sip of coffee. There are no documents like that, Sean, because it wasn't a legitimate business relationship. She was scamming you. What? What are you talking about? Of course it was legitimate. He was practically screaming. VW Holdings isn't a consulting firm, Sean. It's a shell company. She uses it to collect payments from all the men she's running this scam on. You weren't an investor. You were a John, and she was just failing to report the income to the IRS. The silence on the other end was deafening, just his breathing fast and shallow. I filed for divorce yesterday, Sean, and a civil fraud suit against her and her company. The IRS received copies of all the bank records this morning. You what? His voice was a whisper. Jane, you can't. She'll destroy me. Her family. They'll ruin my career. Your career? I finally let the ice in my voice cut loose. You threw car keys at my chest in front of your colleagues and left me stranded while you drove off with your mistress. You stole our children's college fund. You forged my name on a mortgage, and you're worried about your career? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Another call. Margaret Ashford, the woman from the Gala. Sean, I have to go, I said, and clicked over. Jane, this is Megan Ashford. We met Saturday. Her voice was careful. My husband, Tom, just told me Meridian Imports terminated Sean's employment this morning. Oh, snap. Fired. Just like that. The consequences were finally rolling in, and trust me, they were just getting started. You don't want to miss a single second of this dumpster fire. Hit that subscribe button like your life depends on it. Don't be that person who bails before the grand finale. If you're still not subscribed, wow, just wow. Go to the comments and tell me why you hate justice. I'm genuinely curious. Apparently, Megan continued, someone sent the dealership ownership detailed documentation of Sean's relationship with a client, including evidence that he was accepting payments from her in exchange for confidential information about other wealthy customers. I hadn't sent that, which meant someone else had, maybe another wife or another one of Queen's marks. Megan, thank you for letting me know. Jane, there's more, she said. Vanessa Whitmore, Queen, contacted my husband this morning. In a total panic, her family's attorneys informed her that the IRS documentation you filed has triggered a full-blown audit. Not just of her little shell company, but of her family's entire corporation. Her father is, reportedly, furious. He's cut her off, frozen her access to all family funds. The Whitmore family, so protective of their reputation. They'd cut her loose, left her to face the consequences alone. She's asking Tom if he knows any way to make the lawsuit go away, Megan said. She's offering to return some of the money. My husband told her to talk to her attorney. She paused. Jane, you should also know. Several of us, wives. We've been comparing notes since Saturday. Queen's done this before. What you're doing, it's not vindictive. It's accountability. You're protecting other families. When I hung up, I just sat there. Fired, cut off, audited. In 24 hours. Wednesday evening, Sean showed up at the house. I watched him sit in his car for 5 full minutes before he got out. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Dark circles, wrinkled clothes. The slick, confident salesman was gone. This was a desperate, terrified man. Jane, please, he begged. We need to talk. I made mistakes. But this, lawsuits, the IRS, it's vindictive. Think about the children. I am thinking about the children, Sean. I said, my voice flat. I'm thinking about how you stole their college fund. I'm thinking about how you put their home at risk with an illegal loan. I'm thinking about how you publicly humiliated their mother. Everything I'm doing now is to protect them from you. It was a misunderstanding. The payments were legitimate. I walked to the kitchen table and laid out Angela's report. The bank statements, the corporate filings, the evidence from the other men at his dealership. James Morrison from Finance, I said, pointing to a file. Kevin Chong from Fleet Sales. Robert Sullivan, who retired last year. All of them made payments to VW Holdings. All of them had affairs with Queen. All of them thought they were investing. You weren't special, Sean. You were just the latest mark. He stared at the papers, his hands shaking. She told me I was different. She told you that because it worked, I spat. You wanted to believe you'd bagged a billionaire's daughter, so you ignored every red flag. You wanted access to her world so badly you bankrupted your own family to pay the cover charge. He looked up, and for the first time I saw it. Not remorse. He wasn't capable of that. But recognition. The look of a man who finally understands he's been played for a fool. What happens now? He whispered. Now, you move out. You cooperate with the divorce. You find a new job, and you pray the judge shows mercy on child support. Because I genuinely do not care where you go. Call Queen, see if her Greenwich estate has a spare room. Oh, wait, she's probably not taking your calls. He left that night with 2 suitcases. The divorce hearing was in late October. The courthouse was old, smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Denzel had prepped me, Judge Mary Ann Sheffield, on the bench for 19 years, a former prosecutor for financial crimes. She had 0 tolerance for financial fraud in a marriage. Sean sat at the other table with a public defender who looked about 12. He couldn't afford a real lawyer anymore. The kid just kept staring at the mountain of evidence Denzel had filed, his face pale. He knew it was a lost cause. Judge Sheffield entered. She was all business. Steel gray hair, no-nonsense glasses. She looked like she'd heard every lie in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Sean's public defender tried. He really did. He painted Sean as the victim, manipulated by a sophisticated con artist. He'd already lost his job, his reputation. Show compassion, Your Honor. Judge Sheffield listened. Her face was a stone mask. Then she turned to Denzel. Mr. Martinez, your response. Denzel stood. He calmly, methodically walked the judge through everything. The 18 months of depleted assets, the drained college funds, the forged mortgage with a signed affidavit from a handwriting expert, the payments to VW Holdings, the written testimony from Megan Ashford and 2 other wives whose husbands had also been targeted by Queen. Your Honor, Denzel concluded, Mr. Brennan didn't just commit infidelity. He systematically defrauded his own family. He liquidated their assets, he forged legal documents, and he publicly humiliated his wife, the mother of his children, the woman whose consulting practice, as documented in Exhibit D, provided the stable financial foundation for their entire household. Judge Sheffield looked up. She took off her glasses, and she stared at Sean, a stare that could freeze hell. Mr. Brennan, she said, her voice quiet but carrying through the entire room, I have been on this bench for 19 years. I have seen marriages destroyed by every terrible thing you can imagine, but I have rarely encountered such comprehensive, deliberate, and callous financial betrayal as what is documented here. Sean physically shrunk. He just caved in on himself. You did not simply have an affair, sir, the judge continued. You destroyed your family's financial security to fund it. You forged your wife's signature, which I'll note is a felony. You stole your children's education fund. You did all of this while posturing as the primary provider, when the evidence clearly shows Mrs. Brennan was the one holding this family together. She put her glasses back on. The court awards Mrs. Jane Brennan full ownership of the marital home. Mr. Brennan's name is to be removed from the title. All remaining marital assets, including vehicles and investment accounts, are awarded to Mrs. Brennan. Mr. Brennan will be solely responsible for repaying the fraudulent $25,000 home equity loan. Child support is set at 30% of his gross monthly income. Mrs. Brennan is awarded full legal and physical custody of both minor children. Mr. Brennan will have supervised visitation pending successful completion of court-mandated counseling. She held up a hand. I am not finished. Mr. Brennan, you are extraordinarily fortunate that Mrs. Brennan has not, at this time, filed criminal charges for the forgery. That option, however, remains available to her. We are adjourned. We walked out into the bright October sun. My kids, Michelle and George, were waiting with my parents. They ran to me. George just buried his face in my coat. Michelle, my quiet, observant daughter, just held on tight. "Is it over, Mom?" she whispered. "It's over," I said. "And we're going to be okay." 2 weeks later, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Brennan, my name is Linda. I got your number from Megan Ashford. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I think my husband is stealing from me." Her voice had that tremor, the one I knew so well, the sound of a woman whose world is cracking apart. "Tell me what's happening," I said. I spent 3 days on her books. It wasn't a mistress. It was a 7-year online gambling addiction, forged signatures on credit applications, $80,000 drained from their retirement. I helped her. I built her case. I got her the receipts. She wasn't the only one. Within a month, 3 other women called, all of them referred by someone who knew my story. One's husband was funding a secret second family in another state. Another was sending thousands to an online catfish romance. I helped them all. I analyzed their finances with the same ruthless precision I'd used on my own. I connected them with lawyers like Denzel. I became an expert witness. The civil case against Queen settled out of court. She wanted to avoid the publicity. She repaid all $180,000 plus damages and my legal fees. Total, $220,000. She was also required to permanently dissolve VW Holdings. But the IRS wasn't so kind. Their assessment came to $340,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest. And federal prosecutors filed wire fraud charges. She took a plea, 3 years probation, and massive restitution. Her family, ashamed of the scandal, cut her off for good. She's supposedly in California now, working in real estate. Good luck, California. Sean's life? It imploded. He's selling used Kias at a dealership off the highway. His income is a fraction of what it was. Child support takes most of it. He lives in a crappy studio apartment. He sees the kids, supervised, but it's strained. Michelle, for a while, refused to go. James just treats him with this polite, heartbreaking distance. Sean still tries to sell me the "I was a victim too" narrative. I just look at him. Being a fool doesn't excuse being a criminal. My consulting practice? It transformed. I still help small businesses, but I now have a new, thriving division. I offer comprehensive financial investigation and asset protection services for women navigating divorce, especially cases involving fraud and hidden assets. I hired 2 more forensic accountants. I hired a PI who's an ex-state police financial crimes detective. We're getting justice for women who thought they had no options. And that's how I found my way. I built something real from the ashes of his lies. If this story gave you life, if you believe in standing up for yourself, you know what to do. Subscribe. Hit that bell. Don't let the algorithm hide these stories of justice from you. And if, after all this, you still won't subscribe, I guess some people just prefer to watch the world burn without picking a side. Go on. Tell me in the comments why you're sitting this one out. I'll read every single one. 1 year after that night, I walked into a dealership and bought a brand new car, a practical, safe, dark blue SUV, paid for in full, with money I earned. The first time I drove it, Michelle was in the passenger seat scrolling through college brochures. Her college fund? It's fully restored. Bigger, actually, thanks to the settlement. She's looking at Georgetown. As I drove, I thought about Sean's words in that parking lot. Find your own way home. He meant it as a dismissal, an insult, a way to tell me I was nothing. But I did. I found my own way, not back to the fake life I had, but forward, to something I built myself, on a foundation of self-respect. Those car keys, the ones he threw at me, they're in my office, mounted in a small frame. Clients always ask about them. I tell them the story. I tell them that was the moment my humiliation turned into determination. The moment I stopped being a victim and started being an investigator. Sean thought throwing those keys was an act of power. What he actually did was hand me the evidence of his contempt, and I used it to build a case that not only took him down, but exposed a predator who was hurting dozens of other families. In trying to dispose of me, he created me. He created a business dedicated to helping women refuse to be disposed of. And that legacy? That matters more than any fake marriage ever could. I found my own way home, and I built it myself.